Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is another amazing day in paradise. My name is Carolyn Sanders. Most people call me Kai, whichever name you choose to use. I am honored for you by whichever one. Just make sure you pronounce them correctly. I am the mom and student of a very loving, dynamic, um, vibrant, intelligent, handsome, beautiful young black male superhero. And the name that God gave him when I was pregnant is Wisdom. And he is my heart beating outside of me. And so I'm here today because I am coming to the end of my training as a parent coach. We have been on this journey with God as his research assistants through the perils of poverty. We have been um, without stable housing for the last 3 years almost. And it has been very interesting because at some point, God told me not to take it personal. He told me that I needed to pay attention. And so that's what I have strived to do. And one of the blessings that I received at the beginning of this year when I was praying and God kept saying, it's time, it's time, it's time. I was like, time for what? I thought I would understand what that meant. But every month has been something significant that it's time. But in January, what was significant is me being able to start training as a parent coach. I reached out to Jai because I was at a crossroads in my parenting abilities. I felt I had taken Circle of Security when Wisdom was about 2.5. Well, not even quite 2.5. He was in the first quarter of his second year of life, I'll say, of the beginning, the third year of his life. He had just turned 2. And I had taken the Circle of Security through the early Head Start program that he was involved in. And it was wonderful. It gave me this sense of, wow. It taught attachment theory, but in a really simple way that's now what I understand it is that they were teaching attachment, how to create a secure attachment with their child. But what it did was it opened my eyes to Wisdom's behaviors and things that he did and does. And it made me so proud to be a parent, but it also made me realize that security the whole 8-week workshop was talking about wasn't just about my connection with Wisdom, but it was also talking about my connection with myself and my higher power and to others around me. And that we are all seeking for this secure, um, this connection that's safe. And so when Enter Jai in January of 2022, I reached out to them as I began to say, and I asked them if they had any scholarships available. And they didn't normally, but I was very graciously blessed, like to be able to receive one because I'm very passionate about parenting. I'm passionate about parenting being the problem and the solution. And I am passionate about creating a better environment for my son in our dealings with his dad, especially my dealings with his dad, that they are better, and especially as Wisdom is able to witness them. And so I knew that whatever Jai was going to bring to me was going to take me a step further than Circle of Security. But one of the things that I've always known is that with the opportunity, with the projects that God has me working on, Circle of Security is where it's going to start because Jai is intense, to say the very, very least. And so, if at any moment I get emotional, please excuse me. I don't apologize for that. Emotions are real. And so, if at any time any part of what I say gets to you in any way, shape, or form, um, please, I invite you to just sit in those feelings, kind of think about where they're coming from, and what is coming up for you, like what is your need. And this is what we do as a parent coach. We want to find out what your deepest need is, what your triggers are. Um, it's a period of self-discovery. And so I wanted, that is basically what a parent coach does. We take you on this journey. We have a 12-week course that we've taken ourselves through Jai. As parent coaches, we go through the program first, and then we work with practicum clients. And I have two right now. It's interesting because neither one of them are parents yet. One of them is pregnant and due next month, which is exciting. And then the other one is not a parent at all. She is looking to reconcile her relationship with her parents, and get a greater understanding of it, and of her extended family as well, so that she can move forward as a parent, eventually feeling comfortable with the decisions that she's making. And I think that's so powerful. I'm so honored to work with both of them. It is such a great experience. And so parent coaching is not just for parents. It is for individuals that have no children. It is for people who are expecting children. It is for people who have children. It is people who have grandchildren, people who are empty nesters and have no more children at home. Everybody, everybody should have the opportunity to experience a parent coach for their own good, because that's what's going to resonate most, is how others receive the change in the individual that's going through the program, who's that is going through the instruction. um, when I looked up parent when I wanted to talk about what a parent coach is and what a parent coach does, I went to the word coach and I looked it up. And when I looked up the definition, it says a person who trains an athlete. And then other definitions were like a private tutor, or a person who instructs like a singer, or something like a vocal coach. And then like the one that kind of stood out to me was the one who trains an athlete. So I looked up the word athlete, and it says a person trained or gifted in exercises or contest involving physical agility, stamina, or strength. A participant in a sport, exercise, or game requiring physical skill. And as I read that, I read it a couple of times, and I was like, well, dang it. If if a parent isn't an athlete part time, when we run after our children and engage in their activities and are involved with their lives, we are using our physical agility, our stamina, and our strength to be parents. And I just thought that was beautiful. And so, as a parent coach, that is what I do. I train parents in peaceful, empowering, trauma free parenting um, techniques. And the technique is to analyze and to return to your own parenting from a place of no shame, no blame, believing that our parents did the very best they could with the education that they had and the circumstances they lived in, and that we're still here, we're still standing, we can honor them for the things that they've done. And the best way to honor them is if they've done things that we deem as harmful, that we not repeat them. But for all the abundance of love they might have shown us, that we appreciate that and we walk forward in that. And so that is what a parent coach does. Basically, we train parents. And with the Jai curriculum, there is so much that we talk about. But the one that I wanted to spend a little bit more, what I wanted to focus on today, is called Ventral Vagal Activation. And this is based on polyvagal theory by Stephen Porges, Porges. And it seems like a lot of alternative parenting ideas. The coin word is gentle parenting, comes from his work, and identifying these three levels of nervous system activation, with ventral vagal being the highest. And I think this is so fascinating because most people don't realize that parenting is literally science. It is literally science. Yeah, it's a gift. Yeah, it's an art. Like there are many different takes, but ventral vagal activation and stimulation, That is all science. We're dealing with the nervous system. And within our nervous system, we have this nerve called the vagus nerve, and it runs from our brain to our gut, and it is a huge communication tool for our body. And when we experience something that is stuck in our memories, right? In our brains, then our nervous systems react. And we can live in one of three different levels of activation. And from the base, we call it dorsal vagal. In the middle, we call it sympathetic. And then the highest is the ventral vagal, or living in your parasympathetic system. A lot of people are a little bit familiar with sympathetic and parasympathetic. Your sympathetic system is what causes you to go into fight or flight. And your parasympathetic is rest and restore. That's where you have calm, right? Most people don't know about that dorsal vagal. That's like where you are at the absolute bottom, where you don't know what to do. There's just chaos, literally just chaos that surrounds you, or that's how you feel. That's how that's how your nervous system, that's what your nervous system senses. And so as a parent, when our children do things that we are not used to experiencing them doing, or that we got in trouble for, that was not allowed when we were children, then that sends off these sensors in our system that says that's wrong, punish it, or whatever. And we have this opportunity to maybe not parent so powerful in an empowered fashion, maybe not parent in a peaceful fashion. We might choose to do things that our parents did because that's what we know. And so this ventral vagal activation is important not just in a parent, but it's also important in a child. And so I want to share a story with you about an experience that happened to Wisdom and I, to explain the importance of having a child who has a high ventral vagal activation. Because when they do, they live so much more peacefully. They act crazy. And I say that in a very loving manner, because when they're young and they're healthy and their minds are developing properly and their nervous system is developing properly, and they have a parent that is living in that ventral vagal state, then they can too. And so, Wisdom and I just moved out of a living experience that we were having. And there's a lot of backstory that I'm not going to talk about. I'm going to focus in on this one experience, simply because it is such a great honor to have come into Jai when I felt like my toolbox was beginning to empty. Like I had used all my tools and I didn't know what to do. And I didn't realize that the greatest tool I always had, and that was just love. But it gave me a chance to look at my patterns and my triggers and things of that nature so that I could have a higher level living and create that high level living for Wisdom, continue to create that for him. Because despite our housing situation, he has always flourished. He's so intelligent. He reads, he loves math, he loves numbers. Um, and so he's always had it. So I want to share this experience with you. We were moving out of the housing experience that we were in, and we had gone out one day to run some errands. We were gone from like maybe 9, 10 o'clock in the morning to about 3, 4 in the afternoon. And by the time we got in, Wisdom had only eaten breakfast. And so he was a hangry little superhero and he needed some food. And so he was acting his normal self. You know, he when he gets that way, like I know that I need to give him his space. That he might get a little snappy or something along those lines, but he's really not, he just gets hyper. You know, he gets more hyper than he normally is. And so he was on the couch, and the couch belonged to the owner of the house that we were living in. And Wisdom would climb on the windowsill, which was quite large, and he would jump onto the couch. And I personally had no problem with that. Um, this particular day, the owner was around and she had a problem with it. And so instead of addressing me about it, and being clear about how she felt about it, she decided that she was going to address Wisdom. Now, Wisdom is a different child because he is being raised in a secure environment. He's got a secure attachment to me. And so if I ask him to do something and he says no, that's okay. It doesn't send off any triggers. Like in my mind, I need him to say no because if he can't say no to me, then he's not going to go in the world and say no to somebody else who's doing something to him that they shouldn't be doing. And so has an opportunity to have his own opinion. He is able to believe things that are not true for the moment if they are not important. Like for the longest time, he believed that 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9 were even numbers, and eventually he learned that it wasn't because the number blocks told him that they were odd. And I told him, you know what, Wiz, it's okay if you. This is not a battle worth fighting. So if you don't believe me that 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9 are odd numbers, that's okay because you'll learn differently one day. And that's how it is for a couple of different things that we've had disagreements about because he wanted to believe otherwise. And I want him to be able to feel like he has an opinion and that he can be right all the time and then learn that he can be wrong and learn how to correct himself without it being harsh and unnecessary. And so back to the story. She decided to approach Wisdom and ask him to get down, and she made some sort of excuse. I was trying to call him, so I wasn't paying attention to what she was saying. But I heard Wisdom begin to explain to her in his 6.5-year-old ability that she was wrong and that he wasn't going to do what she was asking. And so I called 2 or 3 times. The lady is not stepping out of the way so I could get Wisdom and give him something to eat. Wisdom is standing there trying to explain to her his side of the story. And all of a sudden, she steps up onto the couch in shoes and is standing in my son's face, screaming at him. She's screaming at him about the blinds, that he's breaking them, and about the couch and being on the windowsill and all these things that she didn't like about him. And she took the blind and she pushed them all the way up. They have these huge windows, floor to ceiling windows, and with a high, like, vaulted ceiling. And so she pushed them up as far as they could go. And I'm sitting there. She pushed all 4 of them up so Wisdom couldn't reach him. And she walked away from him and he walked down to the other end of the couch and he let out a shriek. And when Wisdom hits his sympathetic, his fight or flight, when he's getting angry and upset, that's what he does. He shrieks. That's when it's bad. He cries otherwise. Like if he's upset about something, he will cry. But when he shrieks and then starts crying, that's when it's bad. And so I walked over to him and I put my arms around him. I told him it was okay. And he was just sobbing. He was so upset. And I said, "Do you want to talk about it right now, or should I give you a few minutes? You just want me to hold on to you?" And he was like, he just wrapped his arms tightly around me so that I could hold him. So I walked him over to the table and we sat down, or over to the counter, I think in the kitchen, and sat him down. But as I'm getting him, the owner comes back again for another round with Wisdom, not with me again, not with me, but with Wisdom, and saying, "Oh, did I hurt your feelings?" I said, she's like, "Then we can apologize to each other." And I was like, he's not going to apologize. I was like, she said something. And then she was like, "This permissive parenting that you do is just making your child disrespectful." And I'm sitting there going, he's not disrespectful. I said, "You're disrespectful because I was calling him and you should have let me handle the situation." And so for some of you, as you're listening to this, it might send off triggers like, what was he doing on this? What was he doing on that? What was he doing on the couch? What was he doing on the windowsill? What was he doing this, that, and the other thing? Why didn't he just do what she said? Well, because we don't operate in that way. I'm not raising a slave. I'm raising a young Black male. And a lot of people don't understand that the things that he does now will carry into his adulthood. And I need him to have the confidence to explain himself, to stand up for himself when somebody's accusing him of things. If he can't do that now, he won't do that as an adult. And a lot of people do not realize that. And so here I sit with my child who is now in a sympathetic state of fight or flight. He's upset. Once he calms down, he's asking, why did she do that? And I'm explaining, well, some people don't feel like children should have a right to talk to them in the way that you talk to her. And he was upset, and he was talking about how he didn't like her, and um, that he didn't want to be around her. And she has a dog, and Wisdom loves animals. He loves dogs in particular. And so he had been following her and following the dog so he could pet the dog. And he saw this interaction with her as a compromise on his ability to play with the dog. So I love how Wisdom thinks. He's like, at the end of the day, I tell everybody, Wisdom doesn't has never met a stranger, and he feels like everybody is a friend. And that's the most important thing for me, is that he just loves everybody. He means nobody at all any harm. But he will stick up for himself, and he will try to explain himself in the best way a 6.5-year-old can. So the next day he gets up and he's like, the owner was there because she was packing up her stuff and she was expecting her truck. So she's going to be around all day as we're packing up our stuff and expecting our truck and our moving truck. So he says, Mommy, I want to play with the dog, but I don't like her. And I said, well, Wiz, I said, do you remember when we were staying in the house at this point by ourselves, but when we had first moved in, there was a couple and a young girl. It was about Wisdom's age, a little bit older than Wisdom. And I said, do you remember when we found out that the little girl had taken stuff out of our room? I said, that never stopped you from playing with her. I said, you just went about your business. You didn't worry about the fact that she had taken stuff. You just still wanted to be her friend. I said, and you can do that still. And you don't have to worry about it. You can just still be her friend. You can still go and play with the dog. And so that morning at breakfast, he's eating a sandwich. I made him like an egg and sausage sandwich and excuse me, on buttery bread. So his hands are a little bit greasy, right? So she comes in and she's got this bag that she's, excuse me, packing stuff in, and she's trying to put these big pillows in from the couch. And so Wisdom sees her and he automatically runs off to help. And I said, Wiz, you should probably wash your hands. So he gets over there and he picks up the pillow, and I see him holding the pillow and he's got his fingers like this. And I said, oh, I see what you're doing. You have decided that you're going to use your wrist instead of using your fingers. I said, that's genius. I'm like, thank you so much for helping. And so he had helped her to put the pillows in the bag or handing her pillows. And then he sat on top of the bag so that she could zip it. And it worked. And what was interesting about that is because when she had come in not very long before that, she had asked me a question and she had totally ignored Wisdom. She did not say a word to him. She didn't say hello or anything. She just totally ignored him. And so I just felt so proud as a mom. I felt proud the day before when he was trying to explain himself because I knew I was doing something right. And I also felt proud of him that day that he had elevated back to his ventral vagal state of living and that he wasn't going to let somebody else ruin his experience. And I'm just grateful that I've been given the opportunity to learn how to live in my own ventral vagal state of mind. Despite like our financial poverty is not about money. And so I remember somebody saying, don't use, make sure you use words that you mean when you talk about things. Like people are always talking about how they're broke and they're poor and stuff like that when they don't have money. They're like, don't put those words in. Don't use that energy. Don't use that energy. Just say you're temporarily out of cash. And this was years ago. I don't remember who it was. Credit to whoever it was, if anybody knows. And so this journey that we've taken from poverty to prosperity has not been about money at all. That's what God revealed to me, that poverty is not about money because You can have a lot of money and still be in poverty. Poverty is internal. Poverty is living in that lowest level of terror and freeze and chaos in your mind, and not being able to rise up to live in that parasympathetic or ventral vagal state of activation. And so it's important for people to understand that the journey that we've been on has been because I needed to see the poverty within me in order to attract the prosperity outside of me. It also helped me to realize just why so many people who are given the suggestion is to go into a shelter experience, and why you hear so many people being against that. And that's because one of the things I learned in this experience is that what I knew already is that I was already in a state of trauma because we were unhoused, our housing was unstable. And so when you're in a state of trauma and you enter into a situation where there's more trauma, that keeps you in a sympathetic state of living. And so um, and again, I'm not going into the backstory of all the things that happened before this incident with the owner. I just have to say that it gave me such a huge view into the world of people who are like me, who are experiencing housing instability and being in shelters where they can be chaotic, where people can act a certain way, where you don't necessarily know who are your friends and who are your enemies. And you're being asked of things that are bringing up more trauma because people aren't aware of what your triggers are. And so I understand why people don't go that route. I understand why people want to stay far, far away from receiving assistance, even especially when they need it, because it's harmful. And if you're trying to even live in a high state of sympathetic living, where you are just in survival mode, but you got it going on, soon as you experience trauma, remember you're already in a state of trauma. And that makes it so difficult. It makes it so challenging for people to be able to rise above that because they can't get into that ventral vagal state of mind. Another thing I learned about through this experience was about the power of food, and fresh, good, healthy plant-based diet. Because I watched this seminar, this docu-series called The Inflammation Solution by Goodness Lover. I'm going to throw that out there because I thought it was phenomenal. And one of the things that just stood out to me so much, there were two things actually. One was about trauma and how trauma affects the body, including the body's ability to heal, the body holding on to inflammation and creating chronic long term illness. But it also, they have this whole section on the vagus nerve and how what happens with the vagus nerve, how the food that we eat, how that affects our vagal tone and being able to keep a high vagal tone, which will keep us in that ventral vagal state of living, the high state of parasympathetic living. And I just thought that was so fascinating because we live in a world of fast food, processed food, the American diet, chicken nuggets and mac and cheese for kids, where we just throw it together from a bunch of boxes and from frozen and bags from the freezer. And we put that in their bellies. And we wonder why adults and children are going crazy. And I was just like, this was such an eye-opening experience for me, that what we eat will affect whether we have the ability to live in a ventral vagal state of living. That's a huge part of it. It's just not recognizing our triggers, but it's also what we put inside of ourselves, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And that just blew my mind. And so if you're struggling in any way with living below your capacity, and the states that I'm gonna name are that you're living in hell on earth, that you are surviving on earth, or you're thriving in your heaven on earth, because that's how it relates to me. And if you don't feel like you are solidly living, if you are not solidly thriving in a state of heaven on earth, whatever that looks like for you, then you need to understand more about how you were parented And if you are a parent, how you can parent your children better and more peacefully and positively and, a, and in an empowered way, to increase not only your ventral vagal activation, but theirs as well. Because I'm telling you, it is an amazing gift to have a child who has a high ventral vagal activation state. It's amazing. It really is. Just as confidence and does it set off triggers for me? Yeah, because I wasn't like that. He shows me all the capabilities that I have, and that's why he's my superhero, because he teaches me so much. And that's what God told me he was going to do when he gave me his name. I would never put the responsibility of naming a child named Wisdom on myself. And so if you don't know the story, God gave Wisdom his name. He gave him his name, and he told me that his name was not going to be for what he would learn, but for what he would teach. And I'm so grateful that I chose to be his student, that I've chosen to be Wisdom's student, not just his mom, because I have learned so much from him and for him and because of him. Because at the end of the day, when all is said and done, if I could spend the rest of my life just hanging out with my son and just traveling around the world and world schooling him, that is like my greatest desire, because he is just the coolest kid. And the world needs to experience a little bit of wisdom wherever they are. And I just see him rising up and being that man that God called him to be. And I'm so excited for his future. And I'm so excited for mine because I get to be his mom. I'm his mom now, and it's super ultra cool. Um, but there's a peace and there's a joy in knowing that while I'm not getting the parenting piece perfect, that I'm doing a darn good job in getting it right. And that I'm seeing the results, the fruits of that labor on myself. I'm seeing them come out in the fruits that my son is bearing. And I'm really grateful for that. I'm extremely grateful for that. So ventral vagal activation, that's what you need to exist outside of poverty. If you're living in a sympathetic state of activation or lower, if you're living in a state of chaos or terror, then you're living in poverty, even if your bills are paid. And so I just encourage you to reflect on that. And if you need to get in touch with me to schedule some time, schedule a consultation for parent coaching, please do. I'm interested in this information going around the world, going global for people to understand themselves better. And if you have children, to help your children become the productive, healthy, and children that they deserve to be, being raised in safe environments, safe, secure environments where they are seen and soothed because you are showing up for yourself and thereby showing up for them. And those are all words you'll hear if you parent coach with me. So I want to say thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. If you're interested in helping our move from poverty to prosperity externally, there are links in the description of this video. If you are interested in parent coaching, then please reach out to me. I am very passionate about this work and truly believe that everybody deserves to have a chance to analyze their own parenting and where necessary, reparent themselves and then learn how to manage that self-parenting positively. And so with that, I'm going to end. It is about 35 minutes, almost 35 minutes into this video. I went over by about 5 minutes, but hopefully I've given you a good synopsis of what ventral vagal activation looks like, as well as what it means that why poverty is not about money and how the two are connected. So with that, I say thank you again for joining me and enjoy creating your amazing nice. Peace. We love you. We love you. We love you and appreciate you.